Wiley, I want to start first. There are still a lot of questions about high frequency words and those steps of the routine and how we best assess high frequency words. And because there was conversation about writing and the play, and that they're interested in revisiting that.
Sure. So the read, spell, write routine, we introduce a high frequency word and a regular high frequency word, or one that has spellings that we have yet to teach that we need in the story, so the story makes sense. And we put it in a context sentence. So we read the context sentence, we highlight the word, the children read the word, and then we break it down. So we will ask children, let's say if it's the word said, that's the example I always use. We ask children, what sounds do you hear in said? Let's say those sounds. Said. What's that first sound in said? What letter do we write for that sound? Right, the letter S. What's the last sound in said? Said. What letter do we write for that? And then we get to the hard part. So what's that middle sound in said? What do we usually write when we hear the S sound? They'll say E. They'll say, do we write the letter E in this? And they're like, no, no, no. So we circle it, we put a heart, we do whatever it is that you prefer doing to highlight it. And we tell them this is the part that you're going to have to remember when you read and spell. And so then we have children write the word as they say the letter names, S-A-I-D. And so we have the read, the read, spell, write routine in that way. And then when we're revisiting, we quickly go through to see if they can read them. And we will focus on those words for which they're struggling spelling them consistently in their own writing. And we spend more attention on those. So we use our data to determine what we're going to focus on, either whole group or in small group.
Is it okay to use decodable text for fluency? Can I use leveled text for fluency? May I use song lyrics for fluency work? What are the best suggestions for beneficial fluency practice with the materials I have in my classroom?
Yes to all of the above, but the texts that work the best for fluency at K1 are your decodables, because they have a high number of words with the target skills that you want students to be able to read, and you want them to notice those patterns to spell. So we tend to focus more on the decodables. Doesn't mean you can't bring in a really great poem or reader's theater that's a little bit looser. Certainly you can do that. But then as students start learning a lot of skills, and we didn't talk about this with the decodables, but around mid first grade, they have so many skills under their belt. We continue to do the decodables because it's that high intensity practice that children need. But we can start folding in additional texts that are a little bit less controlled. We call those bridging texts. You might have heard that term before. And if you've heard Dr. Seidenberg talk, he always talks about how folding in some of those texts that are slightly less decodable, then the decodables really help students apply and transfer their skills. And because we can't teach every single sound spelling, they start learning some spelling on their own, and we guide them to do that as we use these other texts in a more controlled situation. And so that is a big area that we still are examining and taking a look at. The issue with that is that children are ready for that challenge at different points of the year. So you really have to be in tune with where your students are and what they can handle. But I think it's important to transition them into less controlled text, beginning a little bit in the second half of grade 1 and then certainly into grade 2. We use decodables in grade 2 all the time with our children, only because we have big fluency issues. And so we have that 20 minutes of fluency where they are just getting that really intensive practice, and they're reading some other things. So just to sort of level the playing field a little bit about decodable text, big states like California and Texas, as you know very well, require them to be at least 80% decodable. There's actually, and I say this all the time, and people get upset, but there's actually no research that says that's the percentage it should be. And everywhere I go, people have very strong feelings. No, it's 95. No, it's 100. No. Look, we don't know, but we have our preferences. And I like text that's highly, highly decodable early on, and any words that they can't sound out are words that I have pre-taught. So they are high frequency words that we've done some instructional work with. We have orthographically mapped those words, or there's some story words, a couple story words to make the story a little interesting that we have pre-taught. I like having that tight control at first and then slowly loosening as we go. So you have those books, and then you can start folding in some of the bridging texts. And for fluency, once you get into second grade, you can bring in those songs, you can bring in those poems. You get to third, fourth, fifth, there are so many great speeches and there are really amazing poems. I try to choose things that are connected to the topic we're reading about so we can continue to build knowledge and have examples of the phonics skills that we are working on. So it might take some time to find that just right piece. We want there to be some instructional intention to it.
There are, of course, many classrooms with students whose first language is not English. One teacher in particular mentioned that in her classroom of students, there are many students whose primary language is Russian. And so they're having difficulty with pronunciation and also with alphabet recognition. And she wonders what advice you might have.
Yeah, so most of the children, as you know, in the lab school speak Spanish at home. We do have a few who speak Russian. And so we've had to make some adjustments and provide some supports for them in terms of the work that we're doing. Pronunciation is going to be an issue for a while. When we do that that warm up where we're saying sounds and having children write the letters or the spellings, we have embedded a lot of articulation work in there to really remind students of how those sounds for those spellings appear in English. There are a lot of struggles, especially with the short vowels in our Spanish speakers who will want to pronounce them in different ways. And so that has been something that we've had to spend more time and do more intentionality with. I've always, I do a lot of work, as you know, in Asia with schools there, and people get very, very nervous about pronunciation. I focus more on meaning first, and the pronunciation will get there. I want them to know and use as many words as possible, and then we can move to fine tune the work that we're doing with pronunciation. There are always going to be some differences, even in the United States with different dialects, different regions. There's so many things, even with native English speakers, we have to address when we're working in phonics. So it's very complicated, and we have to really pull back and spend the time to address those issues during our instruction. I find that dictation is a really great time to do that kind of work because they are segmenting words by sounds and they're having to focus on those sounds.